I stood in my own kitchen, holding a wooden spoon, the rich scent of simmering pasta sauce filling the air. Jessica and her cackling friends, a chorus of derision I'd come to know as the Harpies, were laughing at me. The sound was a sharp, grating symphony, a crescendo of condescension that felt like a physical blow. Just moments before, she had delivered the line that would forever divide my life into a before and after. "Stop acting like we're married. You don't get a say in where I go or who I'm with." Her words, so casual yet so cruel, hung in the air, a verbal guillotine. The Harpies erupted in laughter, thinking it was the peak of comedy. A man in his own home asking a simple, mundane question about his live-in girlfriend's plans, being told he had no right to do so. The sheer absurdity of it all should have made me angry, should have made me argue, but a strange, almost celestial calm washed over me. It was the kind of peace that comes after a long, pointless battle, when you finally realize the fight was never yours to win. In that moment, the part of my brain that had been desperately trying to make this relationship work, to bend, to compromise, to ignore all the glaring red flags, simply packed its tiny bags and left. I looked at her smug, smiling face, and I just smiled back. It was a big, friendly, completely empty smile, a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "You know what?" I said, my voice full of cheerful, almost unsettling agreement. "You are 100% correct. My mistake." They laughed again, a little less forcefully this time, mistaking my calm for surrender. Jessica, with a queenly wave of her hand, gave me a condescending little pat on the cheek, and then they all swept out of my house, off to some pre-weekend away cocktail hour. The sudden silence was deafening, broken only by the gentle bubbling of the pasta sauce. The spoon was still in my hand, a drop of red sauce hanging from its tip, a small, perfect tear falling onto the clean white floor. I stood there for a long moment, the silence amplifying the echo of her words. Not married, no say. Paret. A new plan, much more interesting and far more satisfying, began to form in the quiet corners of my mind. It wasn't about revenge, it was about reclamation. A quiet, methodical, and undeniably brutal act of personal justice. The weekend was indeed going to be fun after all, just not for her. The thought sent a cold thrill through me. This wasn't anger. It was something far more dangerous. It was clarity. The game, it seemed, had new rules, and I was about to play to win. The moment Jessica's car vanished down the street, I began what I called Operation Bachelor Pad Resurrection. My first move was a strategic visit to Mrs. Gable, the neighborhood's 80-year-old surveillance expert. I brought her lemon cake, explained Jessica's condescending words, and enlisted her help in a small bit of theater. Mrs. Gable, with the enthusiasm of a seasoned actress, agreed to deliver a simple, damning script when Jessica returned. With my accomplice secured, I returned home. The house, for the past 6 months, had been a showroom of sad beige pillows and pointless decorative bowls. It was time to reclaim my territory. I started by meticulously boxing up every trace of Jessica's physical existence. I hired movers, and within hours, everything, from her magic sparkly dresses to her podiatrist's nightmare of high heels, was packed into a storage unit. I paid for 1 month, a generous, non-marital gesture. With the house empty, the real fun began. I replaced her sterile beige aesthetic with a glorious, unapologetic bachelorhood. The sad white couch was replaced with a gigantic leather recliner sofa with 16 cup holders. Her minimalist coffee table became a vintage pinball machine. Her weird macrame wall hanging was replaced with a framed poster of a grizzly bear. My final and most brilliant move happened at the animal shelter. An hour later, I was home with a 120-pound St. Bernard puppy named Gus. He was a furry, drooling, lovable wrecking ball who immediately claimed the new leather sofa as his own. The house was no longer a prison of beige. It was my home. I spent the rest of the weekend playing fetch, drinking beer, and changing all the passwords. The new Wi-Fi network was named Get Your Own Wi-Fi. On Sunday evening, with Gus's giant head in my lap, I waited. The storm was coming, and for the first time in a long time, I felt completely, utterly prepared. The final act of our little drama unfolded precisely as I had planned. Around 9 on Sunday night, my video doorbell sent me a notification to my phone. There she was. The comedy began almost immediately. She tried her key, it slid into the lock, but didn't turn. The new deadbolt I'd installed that morning was doing its job. She jiggled it, then started banging on the door. From the couch, Gus lifted his massive head, let out a deep, rumbling woof, and then went to sleep. Jessica started calling my phone. I watched it vibrate on the pinball machine, took a calm sip of my beer, and hit decline. After several minutes of increasingly frantic pounding, she seemed to give up. The camera showed her pacing on the porch, running her hands through her hair. And then right on cue, a porch light flickered on next door. It was Mrs. Gable, in her housecoat, holding a watering can. "Oh, Jessica, dear, is that you?" Mrs. Gable called out, her voice a perfect blend of surprise and neighborly concern. "Jessica, thank God!" she said, rushing over. "I can't get in. My key is not working. Is Tom home? I can see the lights on." "Oh, Tom's home," she said, nodding sagely. "He's had the wonderful weekend, a real transformation. He told me the good news. He said you two aren't married. He said he doesn't get a say in anything you do, so he decided to celebrate his newfound freedom. He redecorated the whole house. It's a man's home now, he said, very rugged." She just stared, her mouth hanging open. "And the best part," Mrs. Gable continued, barely containing her glee, "he got a dog, a great big beautiful boy named Gus. He said he wanted a companion who was loyal and didn't talk back. Isn't that sweet?" She slowly turned and peered through my living room window. From my vantage point on the couch, I saw her face pressed against the glass. She let out a sound that was somewhere between a scream and a sob. My phone lit up with a novel's worth of angry all-caps messages. That's when I decided to respond. I sent her a single, simple text message. "You said to stop acting like we're married. You said you don't get a say. I agree. This is my house, and you don't get a say in how I live in it. Since we're not married, I've returned your non-marital property to a secure location. You have 1 month. Have a great life." I then blocked her number. The doorbell camera showed her reading the text. She looked at her phone. She looked at the window. She looked back at her phone. Then she let out a scream of pure, unadulterated rage and threw her phone onto my lawn. It was a truly spectacular meltdown. She ranted and raved for another 10 minutes before one of the harpies arrived to pick her up. A month later, I was at the dog park with Gus. He was happily chasing a tennis ball, and I was talking to another dog owner. A woman approached me hesitantly. It was Chardonnay, the third harpy. "Hey, Tom," she said, look, I wanted to say I'm sorry about that night. We were out of line." "Are you still friends with her?" Well, not really," she said, shaking her head. "She's a lot. She called me last week complaining that her parents are making her get a job. She said it was all your fault for ruining her life." She paused and then looked at Gus, who was now trying to fit 3 tennis balls into his mouth at once. "Honestly, it looks like you're doing just fine." And she's right. I am doing just fine. The house is no longer a beige prison. It's my home. The pinball machine still doesn't work, but it makes a great conversation piece. And Gus is the best roommate I've ever had. He's loyal, he's funny, and he never complains about my cooking. I learned a valuable lesson. Sometimes the best revenge isn't a grand, complicated scheme. It's just listening to what people say and believing them. Jessica told me exactly who she was and what our relationship meant to her. I just decided to agree with her. She said I didn't get a say. And now, in her life, I truly don't. And in my life, she doesn't either. And that, combined with a giant drooling dog, is a pretty happy ending.